Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Test Tube Plus today. My name's Trace, and this is our episode on stereotypes. Welcome. We're going to talk about how we got stereotypes, why they even exist, and why we got stuck with them, and if there's a way to fix them. But first, what is it about stereotypes that's going on in our brains? What's happening? What are we doing when we stereotype? We stereotype immediately and unconsciously all the time. Let me give you some examples. Asians are good at math, right? Women are bad drivers. Olds don't know how to internet. These are all things that people stereotype about, but are any of these true? Probably not. You probably stereotyped me as soon as this episode started. In a fraction of a second, you thought, oh, well, it's got gender, race, age. So then you picked the social groups that I belong to and then categorized me and put me into some box that made your brain happy. We stereotype or categorize because it's ingrained in us. It's part of being human. Now, stereotyping is generally a bad thing. We don't want to make broad generalizations and assumptions that define individuals. That's not healthy. But what the brain initially intended stereotyping to do was there was a way to interact more efficiently. You take information, you process it, and simplify it. You generally wouldn't ask an elderly woman to help you change a tire or ask a kid if they could bum a smoke because stereotypically speaking, that elderly woman isn't going to be able to help you change the tire particularly easily, and children probably don't have a pack of smokes on them. You could be wrong, because stereotypes frequently are, but you're probably not wrong. Our brain developed a system to store anything we absorb from society, whether it's true or not true, and put it into a spectrum of similarity. Anything and everything can be viewed or heard, can be read or smelled or tasted. That's all interpreted by our brain and added to this file that we can then pull from later. It's processed in this way. Let's walk through the brain a little bit. The temporal lobe processes sensory input into meaning, and then works with the anterior temporal lobe, which stores knowledge about people and social groups. And then the dorsal medial prefrontal cortex, which supports the formation of impressions, because that's what the cortex does, it gives context, which is then used by the inferior frontal gyrus to decide whether a situation is safe or not. With all these different parts of our brain, we create patterns and then make predictions that make us more comfortable being out in the world. Stereotyping is a byproduct of this simplification system. The shortcuts that we use we call stereotyping because brains are lazy. Rather than pull all of the information from each individual person we meet, we say, oh, well, they got that shirt from this store. They're probably this kind of person. They like that kind of music, so they probably also like these other things. Rather than asking every single person the same thing, everybody who likes some band, like, Bare Naked Ladies, probably also likes other bands related to that. Rather than ask every person, it's easier to just use shortcuts. Now, our brain actually does this not only with people, but it does it with other things too. Stereotyping or categorizing objects around us is essential so that we understand those objects. Let me give you a non-person example. When you look at a fork, your brain uses all its previous knowledge about every fork that you've ever seen or handled, and then builds a stereotype about forks. You can tell what the fork is made of, how it feels, and what its purpose is, and sometimes you can do all of that without ever touching it because your brain has those shortcuts built in. This saves you energy and time, saves your brain processing power, and you don't have to learn what a fork is every time you want to eat dinner. Unfortunately, the brain doesn't take into consideration that utensils and people are different things. People have feelings, and utensils usually don't. Categorizing people can hurt feelings, and it can also be dangerous and unhealthy and just downright dickish. If you think you're not stereotyping, chances are you're lying to yourself. Everybody stereotypes, even the most conscious and mindful person. Psychologist Wim Denies of Leuven University conducted a study. There is 1,000 people in a room, and you were told 995 of them are lawyers and 5 of them are engineers. So if we picked a person at random and talked to that person, and that person says they have little interest in social issues or politics, but they really like mathematical problems, would you decide that that is a lawyer or an engineer? Despite the dominating statistics, people are going to rely on their stereotypes and will probably guess that this is an engineer and not a lawyer. But what if you said, just for a second, you're like, wait a minute, brain, there's a 99.5% chance that this person is actually a lawyer. They just like math. So say lawyer. So Wim Denai's study says that even though, rationally speaking, this is a room of almost all lawyers, your stereotyping detector is going off so strongly that you're like, that's got to be an engineer. I just hit one of the 5 of them in this room of 1,000 people. Like, that's how strong stereotyping can be. It seems to me that there's actually no way of escaping stereotypes. When I was a kid, I looked at my dad and we started talking about this when I first started to realize that stereotyping was a thing. I saw something on the news and we started talking about it, and I realized that humans stereotype so strongly that if we were blind, we would probably say that you sound funny. Where are you from? You sound funny. What's different about you? You would start to stereotype just not based on how people look. And if you were blind and you were deaf, then you would stereotype based on how people smell. And if you were blind and deaf and couldn't smell anything, maybe it would be you feel funny. Like, humans stereotype at such a base level that it's very difficult to get rid of. And it plays such an important part in the way that we gather information. It doesn't mean that it's a good way to do it. It just means that it's part of being human. If stereotypes play such a prevalent part of our daily life, it might have some basis in truth. Maybe. Like a little bit of truth that's consistently and systematically absorbed since the beginning of your existence, but the truth that you at least experienced at one point in life that then created a stereotype. It's kind of like being in a losing game of tug of war. Do you have any stereotypes that you discovered as you got older? Why don't you tell us down in the comments? And make sure you come back to Test 2 Plus tomorrow for episode 2 of 5 on stereotypes, on whether or not stereotypes are supported by the media or if they come from us. Also, check out last week's episodes all about fear. They were scary good. Use a pun. I'm allowed, I think. Maybe. It's my show. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow on Test 2 Plus.